Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we're actually going to talk about something that I find to be extremely important and also quite interesting because I haven't seen this being discussed quite yet. Right, so this picture, if you find it familiar, then it is because it comes from Dev Diary, the contests of the champion. It was one of the, I believe, 4 parts of Kabam's release of Dev Diaries as a response to the outrage from the players over the state of the game. And basically, it's kind of the to-do list. We're sorry, we're going to do better, and this is how we're going to do, and these are the beautiful things that are going to happen. And there have been several content creators and people in community talking about what has been done, what has not been done, what has been successful, what hasn't, where they're up to. But there has been one specific thing that I personally find vital, extremely important, and that nobody really has mentioned, and that it is also becoming more and more noticeable right about now. Now, what do I mean by it, and why specifically the champions of the contest? Because today we're going to talk about the complexity of the champions. Now, choice doesn't have to mean complexity. This is basically a quote directly from this Dev Diary. Reducing the champion complexity. We use the phrase, no champion can be strong if you can't understand it a lot. It can be easy to get carried away and try and include all the cool new toys in every champion, but we also know it can get overwhelming and fast. And then they topped it off by saying the goal should be maximum depth for minimum complexity. But that's easier said than done, evidently so, because we're very, very far away from that. Right, and what do they mean, and at least how I understand what they mean? Well, it's actually very simple. The champions do not have to be extremely complex. They don't need 80 pieces of utility. They need a few that work well. Now, in an ideal world, I would like every champion to have use. And by that, I'm not saying that every champion has to be OP or anything like that. No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with champions who are mediocre. But in an ideal world, I would like to see even this mediocre champion have a good/great moment to shine. And in order for that to happen ever, we also need to be able to understand what those champions do. Now, for instance, if I asked you what is the basic red goblin rotation, how can you get fury and energize buffs, and how ideally you want to build up to maximum damage? Majority of us won't know that from top of the head. Why? Because since Red Goblin has been released, nobody has talked about him much, aside from a couple people. There's always somebody, but in general, you don't see him in Alliance Wars, you don't see him as an Alliance Quest champion, he's not a popular questing choice, and even when it comes to his supposed specialty of dealing with Spider-Verse characters, everyone goes with Venom, because he's better and more effective. Therefore, unfortunately, Red Goblin as a champion hasn't really had a single place where he can shine. Therefore, he has had about 0 impact to the contest. Even more recent addition, Jubilee. Tell me, what does Jubilee do in her purple firework mode on level 1? Nobody knows, because nobody cares. And again, I'm sure somebody does, but at large, people don't know because they don't care. Why? Because the champion is extremely complex, and the champion is just quite honestly not really worth learning. Jubilee is going to be great for somebody who pulls her as her first 5 stars or as 5th 5-star. She can do a lot of things, and she can be very helpful for a new and progressing player. But so can any other mediocre champion. Realistically, I'm not going to use Jubilee in Alliance Quest and Alliance War. She doesn't have the best damage, and she has a crap ton of utilities. But none of them are kind of like good enough for you to actually use Jubilee as a champion for that utility. For example, she has access to slow, but if you're going to want a slow champion, you're going to want a champion that applies that slow easy, quickly, and doesn't have to sacrifice entire amount of damage to access it. So Jubilee isn't going to be a slow option. You can use Jubilee for power control, but why would you if there's magic or vision or whoever else who just do it so much better. So on and so forth. So effectively, Jubilee is an overcomplicated champion who realistically majority of the player base will forget about within days or months. As harsh as that sounds. And again, I'm sure there are people who love Jubilee. I'm sure there are people who love Red Goblin, Nova, and any other character in the game. But purely from the game's perspective, they have not and will not have any impact on any meaningful game modes. Right, all that being said, so what are going to be the points of today's video? We're going to compare the top champions, well, some of the top champions from each year. We're going to spot the trend that has been happening over the time, and then we're going to try and match it to the statement of the roadmap, and I'm going to try my best to get through it as quickly as I can. Right, so I'm going to skedoodle down to the right side here, and we're going to start with Magic. Here we can see that every single ability that Magic has fits in the screen. She's 2015 champion, so extremely old champion, and one of the best till date, still a beast in Alliance War, and one of the best champions when it comes to controlling power. And here she is. That's all her ability sheet. Very simple. Right? Right. Let me just move this down a bit. So we're going to move on to the next year. So Quake. In my personal opinion, the best champion in the game. And her ability set is slightly longer, as it should be, because let's face it, initially they were not able to produce as complex champions, and naturally, as soon the Kabam developers learned new things and new tricks, champions became more complex, and we can see that in Quake. And Quake, again, to this day, for 2016 champion, incredible powerhouse. And move on to Archangel, and again, Archangel is a champion that has aged like fine wine. Ability description has gotten slightly longer, but the playstyle hasn't. You don't need to know every single line in Archangel's ability kit or sheet to know how to play him. You need to drop heavy attacks, basically they make opponent bleed. Then if you take hits on a block or drop special attacks, that gives opponent poisons. When you make them bleed again when they have poison active, you place neurotoxins. And you know what they do, and that's it. That's pretty much it, what you need to do. So it's a relatively simple ability sheet, even though admittedly longer than the champions from 2015 and 2016, but still very straightforward playstyle, and most importantly, effective. Now we have Ghost. Now Ghost's ability sheet is exactly the same length as Archangel's, right? It's really not all that much. Fairly straightforward. Dash back. All attacks. Here we go. Nothing too crazy, right? She does have harder playstyle. That is where champions evolved. All the 2016, 2017, and all the champions always had very straightforward playstyles. And 2018 upwards, we got these champions who have significantly more complex rotations, and maybe they're harder to play, but they were still effective. Ton of 2018 champions that are still incredibly effective even with relatively medium-sized ability sheets. So we have increased the complexity of the champion's playstyle. But that was increased complexity on your thumbs. That was something that you physically had to go practice and learn and try to override your muscle memory. But understanding the champion still as easy as it was the year before or 2 years ago. Right, let's move on to the next one, Dr. Doom. Now, Dr. Doom has significantly longer ability description, and he also has specific rotation, which I said is something that Kabam introduced in 2018. Now, you have longer ability list, specific rotation, but Doom's a powerhouse. Doom's worth learning. 2019, I'd argue, was the last year that we got these mega powerful champions. We got champions like Nick Fury, Dr. Doom himself, and a handful of others. Warlock, for instance. Because there was quite long ability lists, but they were effective. So people learned them. People learned them properly because it was worth learning them. Now, in 2020, we definitely saw a shift in how champions were created. with champions like Apocalypse or Cosmic Ghost Rider being like some of the best champions released that year, but the power level fallen. None of the 2020 champions are quite up there, let's say in top 10, top 15 list of champions in game overall. So I do think that the bottom level increased. I think in 2020 we got very, very few bad champions. We also think the best champions 2020 don't quite compete with the best champions of 2019, 2018, and so on. Yeah, Cosmic Ghost Rider is cool, but he hasn't had that much of a significant impact on the game realistically. He's nowhere close to being the most popular AQ or AW attacker. He is not great on defense. And yeah, it's very, very fun to use him, and he is a good champion, I'm not gonna deny it, but realistically, it's not as useful as Nick Fury, Dr. Doom, Ghost, to name a few. So in 2020, we saw this change where champion ability list got even more complex, but that total power output has reduced. And unfortunately, in 2021, thus far, we only have had 4 champions, but we see that taken to an absolute extreme with champions like Psycho Man and champions like Jubilee. And what do I mean by that? Is that we have incredibly long ability list, but what makes it even worse is because you do not only have 3 and quote-unquote modes that he's in, for example here, but each special 1 and special 2 have 3 different sets of abilities based on what mode you're in. So you need to juggle basically 9 different sets of abilities, and you have 6 different abilities split across 2 special attacks. It's not where you can drop a special 2 and know what it's going to do. It's you drop a special 2 and you need to double check whether you were in the quote-unquote right mode for the right effect to take place, and that's given that you even remember exactly what which mode did. And yeah, the same case there would be with Jubilee. So let's take a look at 2021 champions. Again, an incredible list of abilities. And with Jubilee, I think it's even worse because they change modes on every single attack, and your head is going to explode trying to keep track on which mode does what and which mode you want to be in, let alone if it was worth it. If Jubilee was a great champion, it would be quite tricky and hard initially to learn it inside out and be able to retrieve this knowledge from your head on a moment's notice in the middle of fight. So that inherently is a hard playstyle. But none of it's worth it anymore. And that's why Jubilee is, well, that's a big reason why nobody's really gonna care for Jubilee. Just like people don't really care for Red Goblin anymore, a whole bunch of other 2020 champions. Like again, Red Goblin, let's take Venom. Why do you need Red Goblin, right? So that was kind of the point here. So in my opinion, unfortunately, Kabam has definitely failed to live up to what they themselves put out there as a necessary thing for this game to improve. Reducing the complexity of the champions. They sure as shit have not done that. And even worse, they also have reduced the depth, the max potential of the champions they're releasing, in my opinion. Right, I don't have an innate need to always feel right, but I believe I have made quite good case for my argument, and I also believe that it's about time Kabam gets pulled on that. Because currently it seems that this is one of those things that they put out there because it seemed nice and seemed that it would be something that would calm people down. But by the looks of it, they have forgotten all about it the moment player base kind of calmed down and they moved on. Because I definitely haven't seen champions get more simple, more straightforward, or more effective. If anything, they are doing everything to go against whatever they said here. Right. Let me know what you guys think. Am I right or am I crazy cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? Either way, that is me done for today, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I will catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information